All right. Welcome, everybody, to the All-in-One Nerd Show. I'm your host, Labruski, and with me today, as always, is Illuminati. Tyler, how are you?
I am great. I am
Good.
excited to finally be home.
I bet. I bet. Awesome. So I am having this premiere on the 28th. So for those of you watching live, it's not really live. It is pre-recorded, but we still wanted to bring you guys a show on the 28th, the last Saturday of the year. And what better topic to do other than our top 5 or our top reads and then our top movie/TV shows.
Yes.
So why don't we get right into it? Let me just get the banner up here and we will talk about our favorite comics. Now, these are comics that didn't necessarily come out in 2024. They're just comics that I read for the first time and really enjoyed. And I think, Tyler, that's the same thing for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, some of them did come out 2024, but some of them didn't. It's just anything that I read. That's how I thought about it. So,
Yeah, that's how I thought about it too. I don't think any of mine came out in 2024, honestly. Problem is, I don't read really new issues. I wait till to pick up the trade or the collected edition. So it's hard to do and read it within the same year it's published on
I
top
think
of everything
three of
else.
mine came out this year, but the other three didn't.
Awesome. So you have 5, I have 6. So why don't I start and then I'll end it too? Yeah, I think
Well,
that
I
works.
did grab a sixth one during
Oh,
the
cool.
countdown, so I'm
Okay,
at you now.
cool. So why don't you can go first with your first top read. And for mine, I don't know if it's the same for you. This is like in no particular order. I just kind of picked the ones I most enjoyed, but they're not, in order.
Yeah, the official listing I'll have on my channel of me
Oh, sweet.
actually
When's
doing
that
my
going to be
top
uploaded?
10. I
Do
don't
you,
know.
you don't have a date yet?
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
holidays, it's gonna be flying by the seat of my pants if I'm honest.
Yeah, for sure.
But this won't be in any official order other than the last two. That those will be kind of in order. Those are the most important books. But the first one that I'll talk about is Pulp
Oh,
by Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, who is, or they are, no stranger when it comes to creative teams. Typically kind of exist in more of the crime noir
yeah.
genre where they focus on those like old timey style crime, fedoras and trench coat style of
Detective
stories.
stories. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And what this is, which I didn't expect before jumping into it, is a more modernized Western.
Oh, sweet.
Um, so it actually follows a ex cowboy outlaw who was an outlaw back during the actual Western days. He has since retired. He is much older. He actually creates comic books now.
No kidding.
Um, yeah, and he ends up kind of coming to terms with the fact that he's old and slowly dying, like we all are.
Yeah.
And he gets worried about what he's going to leave behind. So he decides to do one last job before
Oh,
his untimely death. So, yeah, so that is the entire synopsis there. It goes into a whole nother subgenre when it comes to the historical era that this story takes place in and what was kind of happening in the world. And it has
what era is
one.
that?
What was
Is
that?
that what era would that be? Because
It's actually on like the first page, so let me find it real
you
quick.
said he was a cowboy, and now he's a comic book writer, right?
Yeah, so 1939 is when the story takes place.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's definitely a period piece. Does it jump back and forth between him and his like heyday as a cowboy and the
Not
present?
really. Not
No.
really. I mean, he
Okay.
has some visions like remembering his heyday, but it doesn't jump back and
It
forth like
doesn't linger on it.
consistently.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the
That's
interesting
awesome.
part is the comic that he creates is a Western comic, and he
Okay.
bases it off of his real life events. So you kind of get to see the things that he did and whatnot.
Yeah.
Uh, but most of the plot takes place in modern day, which is like him when he's older.
1930s or whatever.
Yeah,
Awesome.
one of the best endings in a book ever. Did not see it coming, and
Really?
yeah, heart racing at the end. Really,
Oh
really,
my
really.
goodness. I'll have to check that one out. That one's, I mean, ever since I discovered Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, I feel like that's been on my list to buy and read, and I just have
Yeah.
not committed to it yet for some reason. Um, and actually, I have Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips on my list too, which
Yeah.
is the first Reckless book. I just read this
Nice.
not even a month ago, like a couple weeks ago, and I did a video on it because I enjoyed it so much. Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I can say about it other than it's awesome. It follows I guess he's kind of like a bounty hunter. I mean, have you read it? You know the story, right? A little bit.
I know the story, but I have not read anything really at all Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, if I'm honest. Pulp was my
Oh,
first experience with the creative team.
that's insane. You have
Yeah.
to read. You have to read Criminal for sure. Those deluxes, if you don't own them already, are just beautiful.
Yeah.
So Reckless, I'll kind of give you the elevator pitch. It follows a bounty hunter of sorts in the, I think, early 80s, I want to say. And he's in California area. And if you want to hire him for your services, you call a 1-800 number and you just tell him about the job. If he likes it, he'll do it. If not, he won't. And yeah, this is kind of like a mystery. You know, some things creep back up in his former life. I don't want to go into too much spoilers because some things are revealed, you know, later in the book. But it is kind of like a mystery detective story in a way. He's not a detective, but you know, there is a mystery he's trying to solve. And it's super, super fun. I had a lot of fun with it. So I
Yeah.
definitely recommend you check that one out.
I've heard really, really positive things. It's just I've never been like a crazy crime noir guy. So like
That's
that's
fair.
why Pulp interested me so much, because it was like nobody called it crime noir. And then when
Yeah.
I jumped into it and found out it was like a more modernized Western, I was like, oh, but I do want to dive more deeper into the
Yeah.
crime noir. I want to read Kill or Be Killed first, though.
Oh
That's
my
like the one I
gosh.
want to do first.
That I mean, it's definitely kind of like a crime drama, but it's different where I don't want to spoil anything. There's some supernatural elements in there a little bit.
Yeah, I have heard
So
that.
it's definitely different from like Criminal, or even like Reckless, I would say. But you know, it's the same creative team. So I love that series. I want that hardcover so bad.
Me too.
That's such a whale of mine. Um, and I just own there's 4 trade paperbacks. And I think there's a compendium coming out, or maybe it's already out.
I think it's
Uh,
already out, I
is it?
think.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to read it. And that's such an awesome story. I would love for that to be adapted into like a TV show. I think it'd make a perfect like 3 season or 4 season, maybe not even. You could probably do it in like 2.
Yeah.
I think it would make an awesome TV show. But anyhow, yeah. So Reckless, definitely check this out. I think there's 4 more of these where I believe they read like an anthology. So you don't necessarily need to read them in any particular order. But I believe it follows the main character, Ethan Reckless. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I think I read this in like one day. It's a quick read. Not
Yeah.
very dense at all, but yeah, definitely check it out.
I feel like they really like their like short condensed stories, because even like Pulp is like 64 pages, the entire
Yeah,
story.
Ed Brubaker, he talks a bit about how he wanted to do a pulp action hero type of guy, and that's Ethan Reckless, where they can pump out because this was just released as this, I believe. Like it wasn't collected in floppies or anything like that. And
Mhm.
I believe they released the first 3 within 1 year. So they just pumped them right out. And I don't know if these are going to get like any sort of deluxe or anything like that, or if they're just going to be collected in these hardcovers. I'm fine with just this. Like this is good for me. And it's nice too because you get a full story, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. I really like it. I don't like the only thing I would say, and I didn't even bring this up in my video, is the way the chapters are. I don't like how the chapters are laid out because I'm used to reading like an issue at a time and then
Yeah.
taking a break, reading another issue. Whereas this, it's not. It's structured differently for me, and it's such a small nitpick that it really doesn't matter. So yeah, I I really love this book, and
I'll
I
have to
love
read
all
that.
I love all their books, honestly, the ones I've read at least. All right,
Um,
what's your next one you got?
Next one. I'm actually very proud of myself because I only have one book from the big two on here,
Oh
which
wow, okay,
is pretty impressive. But my next book is going to be a manga.
okay, cool.
And that will be Blade of the Immortal.
Let me make you full size because I want to see that.
Yeah. Blade
That's
of
a
the
nice
Immortal.
hardcover.
This is a Dark Horse Deluxe Edition. They've been releasing all kinds of titles in these editions, best edition in manga. This is actually great for comic book readers because it does read left to right instead
Oh,
of right
interesting.
to left. Um,
Was that
and
was
what was
that the
that?
way it was made, or did they flip it? The publisher.
So typically, what they do with manga is they mirror it. So what they'll do is they'll just take the image from right to left, mirror it, and then allow it to read from left to right. But it kind of throws off reading because, like, if somebody's like, "Oh, to your left," they'll be looking to their right or something like that.
Sure.
But in this specific title, this is one of the few titles where the actual mangaka, the creator, cut out each individual panel and made it read from left to right
Oh
instead of
wow.
mirroring it. So he put in the legwork and everything to make it readable and palatable to comic book readers. So
Okay. Wow, that's awesome.
that's another reason it's great for comic book readers. I don't think it reads like a manga at all. Like typically manga really has a lot of like comedic relief and maybe some like fan service when it comes to like either nudity or this does not have that. There is like nudity and stuff, but it's in a serious tone. It's
Right.
meant to be during serious scenes. It's not comedic relief or fan service. But synopsis of the story is there's a samurai by the name of Manji who is a not so great guy due to what happened to his sister. He ends up killing a whole slew of men and then ends up actually becoming cursed to never be able to die until he slays 1,000 bad men.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so he's doomed to live for all of eternity unless he can literally kill 1,000 legitimately bad men. So he gets hired as a bodyguard by the character of Rin, who is a young girl. Um, and she takes him along to hunt down the Ito Ryu, who is like a it's a type of like dojo and sword school, but think of it as like a gang kind of. That's
Okay.
the way it kind of reads. And they killed her parents, so she hires him to hunt them down, and he's interested because he could kill a bunch of bad men, and she's interested because she gets revenge, and it jumps down all kinds of rabbit holes from there, from government espionage to more supernatural events, Manji running into characters that are potentially like him.
Okay.
It is beautifully illustrated. The best way I can describe the art is like if Jim Lee did manga. Like it's very cross-hatchy and lots of kinetic energy and movement through every single panel. But yeah, it is absolutely beautiful. It's an emotional story. You really fall in love with the characters you get introduced to. and there's a lot of characters that start out as villains and turn into heroes, and heroes that turn into villains. So it keeps you on
Okay.
your toes. So this is a manga I recommend to all comic book readers always. Is
Dude, that
so
sounds
good.
awesome.
So good.
I is that entire series done now, or is it still ongoing?
It's 100% done. It has paperback omnibus editions, but it also has these editions. Both are finished with 10
Oh,
volumes.
wow. With 10
Yep.
volumes, you said?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. That sounds like an awesome story. Like, I think I might wanna check that out for sure. I gotta add that to my list. You
They do
sold me
have
on
a
that.
anime adaptation on Prime Video. I can't remember what it's called. I know it's Blade of the Immortal, but it's like Blade of the Immortal something, like some type
Okay.
of subtitle, but it's pretty faithful. It leaves out some like minor details that kind of add even more context, so the manga's still better, but the anime is a good way to get into it.
Interesting. Okay. I do kinda just wanna dive into that hard cover. So
It's so good.
I might pull the, trigger on that and get that because that sounds like an awesome story. Um, okay, sweet, sweet. So, for my next, favorite read, it is did you hear what Eddie Gein done? Is this a
Yeah.
story you've read or no?
No, but I watched I think like 2 documentaries on Eddie Gein.
Yeah,
So,
he's a messed up dude. They're making
yeah.
a Netflix show about him too with,
Mm.
Charlie, so I can't remember his name, Charlie Hunt. Anyhow, yeah, so this book, it follows the life of Ed Gein, which if you don't know, he is a notorious serial killer. Um, and yeah, this is a messed up book to say the least. If you don't do well with disturbing stuff like this, definitely don't check it out because it's very graphic at times too. And the artwork is just beautiful. Let me see if I can find a good page to show off. Um, let's see.
Because it's black and white, right? Like
It
there's no
is
color.
black and white. Yeah. Oh, here, right here. I like this one. Let me make my full screen. There we have Ed Gein. And yeah, it's all black and white.
Wow.
And yeah, the artwork is just fantastic. And
Wow.
I read this right before Halloween, like a couple days, and it was like the perfect Halloween book. It like got me into the Halloween spirit and everything. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I want to check out, and I don't think it's by the same people that did this one, but kind of in the same vein, My Friend Dahmer, um, which is
Oh yeah.
another graphic novel memoir. And I
Yeah.
think, well, the author, I think, actually was that Jeffrey Dahmer's classmate. Um, so I definitely want to check that out at some point, maybe next Halloween, because this book is hard to stomach at times. I did read it in one night, though, I think, or maybe 2 nights. I just binged.
There
I
there's a
really
hardcover of that, right? I
This
think.
is the hardcover, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Okay.
there may be a bigger edition. This is like, let me compare it to this.
Mm,
So in Reckless, this is like it's not even an oversized hardcover, really, you know. So it's definitely smaller
yeah.
compared to other comics, to like floppies. Even it's a smaller print. So there may be a bigger edition of it out there. I'm not 100% sure. With that being said, though, I mean this edition reads fine. There's no gutter loss or anything like that. It didn't take away from the story or the
Yeah.
experience at all. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you check this one out. It's I had a good time with it, even though it was very messed up and very disturbing at times.
Yeah, I gotta admit that's been on the list for a really long time, but like anything in this hobby, like something just takes its place, and then I'm like, oh, I
Yep.
need to grab this, and then I forget about it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think I got this for like cheap too. I don't know. I can't remember where I ordered it from, but I think it was like half off or something. And this is a book I'll definitely reread. I remember I was watching a video, I think it was Omar's video on it, or he was talking about it, and he's like, "This is a book I'll never reread." But for me, it's like the opposite. I'm like, I could read this once a year around Halloween time, kind of get in the spirit. Like, I don't know. It's once I'm exposed to the disturbing parts of Ed Gein's story and whatnot, it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of over it, I guess, if
Yeah.
you will. So I definitely could read that once a year. So I don't know if I will, but I could.
Are you a fan of like serial killer stuff, like
Um,
podcasts and
not
stuff?
not really, honestly. I mean, I'll watch the documentaries on Netflix and whatnot, but I usually don't go out of my way to like watch something on YouTube, or like an iceberg video or anything like that. So I would say I enjoy learning about, serial killers, and which is weird and kind of a weird thing to say, but it's time we live in, I guess.
I don't think it's weird. I think that's
I mean,
all
there,
history. It's super interesting.
yeah, no, it's very true. So I will, I will sometimes go on like a kick where I'll rewatch some documentaries like the Jeffrey Dahmer one, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy. Um, if you haven't watched those documentaries on Netflix, you definitely should. Those are pretty good, but be careful because they are very disturbing at times.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
what about you? Are you into all that serial killer, true crime, that stuff,
Yeah,
or yeah?
yeah, I find myself really into like the true crime stuff, or one of my big kicks is like the mob, like
Okay,
documentaries that follow like the mobs and the mob wars and everything that
yeah,
took place and all like that stuff is so interesting.
huh? I wonder if there's. I feel like there's a mob comic about Al Capone. I feel like there is.
Maybe. I do know the
I'd have
best
to look it up.
documentary that I watched is Fear City on Netflix. That one is really
Okay.
good if you haven't watched that.
It's funny. I like shows like The Sopranos. I love The Sopranos and I love mob movies and stuff, but for some reason, the documentaries and the true life aspects of it don't really interest me that much. I don't know why.
Oh,
Even though like Goodfellas is kind of based, I think it is based on a true story, or it definitely
yeah,
pulled from, I think
it
it is,
is.
yeah. Um, Casino, that's kind of another
Yep.
mob movie that I really love. So I love those type of movies, but I tend not to watch those documentaries on Netflix because I have tried a few of them, and I feel like I've tried Fear City too, and I don't know, it just didn't stick for some reason. But
Yeah, I think the surface level stuff like mob family versus mob family can get a little boring, but when it goes into
yeah,
like the deep nitty-gritty about like how they were running the United States, like going into stuff
yeah,
like with JFK and them
at a
building
time,
Vegas and being the literally the people that made that happen, and
yeah,
like
the
that is
strip,
so
yeah.
just mind-blowing.
Have you seen The Irishman?
No, because of the runtime. I'm
Ah,
always like,
it's
that is a
brutal.
lot to commend.
It's brutal, but it's. I wish Netflix would do it where they did this with the Hateful Eight, where they broke it up into like episodes, and it was a
Yeah,
lot easier to watch because you can not necessarily get a complete story with each episode or anything like that, but it's a good stopping point. So I wish Netflix would do that with The Irishman
yeah,
because I think that would definitely help, people like you or, because it is like 3.5 hours or so, something crazy, and it's a
yeah,
lot. But if you ever watch it, it's really good. It's a lot about Jimmy Hoffa. I think that's who it is,
yep,
which he was a huge political figure in America at one point, and they had him in their pockets essentially. So it's an interesting story for sure. I would definitely
yeah.
recommend you
Yeah,
check
I'll
it out.
watch it. I'll watch it at some point, I'm sure.
Cool, cool. All right, what do you got next?
Next one I got is my One Big Two book,
Sweet.
which is Peacemaker Tries
Oh,
Hard.
I heard so much
This
about this.
Oh, it is so good.
I
The
heard it was
glare
loud,
is, of
but
course, messing it up.
you can see it pretty good.
But Kyle Starks, Steve Pugh, Jordy Belair, all on a title. Kyle Starks, I think, is like a kind of newer name to comics, but
Okay.
I typically don't like Steve Pugh's art in other titles that I remember reading that he did. But there's
Okay.
something about the almost like cartoony nature to his artwork and how it kind of lends to Peacemaker almost beautifully because of the like cartoony and whimsical, but also like kind of crude humor aspect of Peacemaker, because this is 100% John Cena's Peacemaker in a comic book.
Okay.
Peacemaker looks like John Cena, he acts like John Cena.
Very much the
It
same vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
definitely tried to capture that same vein in
That makes
comic book
sense.
format.
Makes
But
sense.
one of my favorite aspects about this book is the use of obscure characters. So you have characters like Snowflame, who is a supervillain that gets his powers from cocaine. He was created in like the 70s when drugs and stuff were super prominent. Chemo is another one who I think we really saw a lot in the early 2000s, but he's kind of just disappeared as well.
Okay.
But they get used a lot when it comes to this story, and then even
Yeah.
more other obscure characters. So it is so good. It's a quick read. It's not very big at all. It's a single volume, one and done. You read it and you're done. And the entire story has to do with Peacemaker trying to rescue his dog named Bruce Wayne. And that is literally the
Oh, that's
entire
great.
plot of the story. That's it. Oh,
That's great.
and the supervillain trying to make Deathstroke babies, which is another very weird, whimsical story
What
element,
about?
but so good. Highly recommend, especially if you want to like unplug the brain and just kind of
Yeah.
relax and have some fun, which is kind of what we all need every now and again.
I remember when that came out, and there was a lot of buzz around it because I believe it came out like the beginning of the year or close to it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I remember there being a lot of buzz around it, and I did want to pick it up, but I think I couldn't find the right price or something like that. I can't remember. Um, but that is a book I really want to check out eventually. It
Yeah.
just seems like something because I enjoy the Peacemaker show. I enjoyed John Cena in the role, so I think it's definitely something that's I would get a kick out of for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had some reservations to it because it was Peacemaker, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know anything about Peacemaker other than the show." But the book does almost exactly what the show does, where it gives you some quick origin elements where you
Sure.
kind of get to know the character very quickly, and you start to like the character right
Yeah.
away. So you don't need to know anything about Peacemaker going into it. Just buy it and start reading, and you'll be entertained for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's a book I need to pull the trigger on. That's
Yeah.
I have so many books like that where I'm just like, I just need to buy it already because I know I'll like it, but I don't know. I just don't.
Well,
Awesome.
it's hard. They're expensive, right? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you look around and you're like, oh, I could just read that book one more time, or I could just,
Yeah.
but then at the same time, it's like, maybe that's the capitalistic nature of me, but buying a book just feels so good too at the same time.
Opening the package, it's like, oh, it's crisp.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Peacemaker. What was it? Peacemaker Goes
Tries
Trisard?
hard.
Trisard. Got it.
Yep.
I love that title too. It's just perfect, I feel like, for a
Yeah.
Peacemaker title.
It, it,
Awesome.
it
Awesome.
encapsulates the story. That's all he's doing the entire story is trying to be a hero, and he just keeps messing up.
He keeps failing. Oh gosh. Uh, awesome. Okay, let's see. For my next book, I actually have one that's um I discovered through one of your videos, in which I read
Oh,
earlier in the
really?
year, On the Stump
Nice.
by Chuck Brown.
Yep.
And as a history buff, um, and I do like American politics. Well, old American history and stuff. Um, this book's awesome. It's you've read it, but
Mhm.
it's a alternate history of America and tradition. Essentially, if you want to be elected really into any office, political office, you have to fight on a tree stump.
Mhm.
And if you win, you become the new congressman, representative, or president. So this book is definitely wild. It's funny. The artwork is beautiful. The storytelling's awesome. And I think me and you talked at one point about how we wish this was a series. From my understanding, this is kind of a one and done, but they definitely leave it some things open.
Yeah.
Now, you do get a complete story, um, but they tease some things, and I see the potential of it becoming more of a series. So I really hope they continue with this series. I think it's great, and I would love to see it in like an oversized format.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. And one of the aspects that I love about it is like it's political in the best way
Yeah,
possible, where it doesn't take itself too seriously, like the character that's trying to break tradition and change tradition, like he's like Hulk Hogan, he's like a guy with spandex and a giant, wrestling belt and
yeah,
stuff. Like he's just like such a numbskull, and you can tell that they're just making light of, some of the story elements that maybe represent some aspects of our real life political situation,
yeah,
but also at the same time they are like trying to tell an actual serious story, and
yeah,
it's really really good. So many awesome elements to that.
yeah. I think it walks a fine line, and I think it kind of borders on the line of satire, really,
Yeah.
where this book has a lot to say about the current political climate, and different aspects of capitalism and how that can affect, politics and whatnot. So there is, um, I don't want to say an over serious tone or anything like that to it, but there is some deeper meanings in the
Yeah.
book. But it's a lot of fun, you know. So it
Yeah.
really walks this great line of being super fun and then also having more of a serious message. And it's just I would say it's overall super absurd, which I think,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people that hits home when it comes to politics. I think really regardless of whatever side of the fence you're on. Um, So I think there's a lot to relate to. I actually read this right before the election. I think the day or 2 days before the election of this year, and I had a blast with it. I thought it was so much fun, and I read it in one sitting. And there's so many just outrageous characters, and the villain is super just outrageous and over the top. And I
Yeah.
don't know, it's a great read. So it's super short too, and you can get it for cheap. I think like $10 or something. Um, so definitely, I feel like so many people just don't even know this book exists. I didn't
Yeah.
know it exists till I watched your video of you recommending it, and I said that's something I would love. So, and I did. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely check this one out if you have not read it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a hard book to talk about too, because
Mhm.
due to the political climate, so many people are like, I don't want politics in my comics type of thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
obviously that comic revolves completely around politics, but like if you take it at surface value, it's not like too on the nose, like you can still kind of disconnect a bit and live in
I
that
think so.
world, unless you dig a little deeper. Like you said, like there's definitely some hidden satire and meanings to a lot of things, but if you take
Yeah,
it at surface level, there's great action, great characters, great art, and the dialogue is kind of ridiculous at
it
times.
is.
So just have fun and read it, I think.
I really like the world they built. And
Yeah.
that's why I want to see more from this world because I think it's just such a fun concept. and there's just so much you can do with it, you know? So I
Yeah.
really hope Chuck Brown continues with it. And then who did the art? Prenzi.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Prenzi?
Yeah, I didn't find any other titles that they did, so I don't know.
Huh. Interesting.
It's a
And
first for
Chuck
me.
Brown, he did Bitterroot, right?
Yep.
Is that kind of a historical fiction
Yeah.
too? I
Yeah,
forgot.
it has to do with the Harlem Renaissance and
Oh,
um hatred slash like racism
sure.
personified in like a monstrous being and creature
Mm,
like people that the which I don't know how to pronounce the family. I always say Sengier, but I think it's pronounced differently. But
yeah.
they're an entire family of like hatred hunters where they hunt down these either just full of hate people or racist, whatever it may be, and they try to take them down in different ways because there's two separate sides of the family, that one that's a
Interesting.
little bit more peaceful and one that's a lot more like, oh, we just
Interesting.
need to
Okay.
end them type of thing.
And that's a completed story too, right? Or is
It
that
has a deluxe book one, but they've since continued the series, so it will eventually get a book two.
mm,
Because this has an ending that completely tells you where it's going to go next, and it's
okay.
very interesting.
Got it. Got it. And that's kind of how I feel about this ending too. You know, I
Yeah,
think I don't know. I don't know. I think you only get 5 issues in this, and that's really it. And I really hope this gets more. I think that would be a lot of fun.
I
So,
agree.
all right, awesome. What do you have for your next book?
Next one is another manga, and
Mm,
a disclaimer that I didn't say when I talked about Blade of the Immortal. So I'm holding up volume one, but I've finished these series. So
okay.
for Blade of the Immortal, during the year of 2024, I finished all 10 volumes.
Oh,
During
wow.
this year of 2024, I finished all volumes of Berserk. Um, Berserk, I've said multiple times on my channel, live streams, anywhere that I'm at, this is the best thing that I've ever read in the medium of comic books, manga. Even if we're talking about like movies and series, this is my favorite story ever. For me
Wow,
as a
okay.
person, this story was incredibly transformative, um, because it dives into the story of Guts and his struggle with a lot of aspects of who he is, his past, things he's been through, his trauma, his mental health issues that they don't necessarily call out as either anxiety or depression, but it's very clear to see it is those things.
Sure.
Um, and it's really, really a great book that explores the idea of acceptance behind oneself and accepting the good, bad, and ugly when it comes to who you are and what you've been through. But it's all personified in a dark fantasy world where Guts is essentially being hunted by demons 24/7 because of a brand that he has on his body that took place during a sacrificial ritual eclipse where him and his entire adoptive family was sacrificed to, for lack of a better word, like five versions of like Satan. They're like super powerful demon like beings. And because of that brand, he's doomed to be hunted by demons at all times for the rest of his life.
Oh my god.
But at the same time, the woman that he loves went through the eclipse with him, went through some very traumatic events, and has lost her mind. So she is a very fractured person, almost childlike due to trauma. So Guts is on a mission to try and find some type of magical being that could piece her back together. Um, But
Interesting.
Kentaro Miura is a king of like subtext when it comes to his artwork or even his dialogue. Like it's another book where if you just look into the panel, you can see so many hidden meanings to the story and to the characters and how important they are, to each other.
Yeah.
And it's also really, really great for fans of like Final Fantasy or other like JRPGs where you have like a
Right.
party system, you know, your mage and your tank and your DPS, because later into the story, I want to say around like volume 10 or 11, he forms his own party of multiple
Oh,
characters that all have something to value, whether it's comedic relief, magic abilities, the ability to protect. There's a little boy who's like very quick and agile. There's another warrior named Sepulchre who is almost like Guts's equivalent, but on the speed side of things, where like Guts is very powerful. But the whole book is about resilience and powering on and accepting yourself. And it is so, so good. I think this book really, as cliche and dumb as it sounds, like helped me become a man, because it like just really taught me that stuff I've been through, who I am, like I don't need to be ashamed of it. I need to be
yeah.
proud of it. And I need to accept that, you know, this is the way life is and I can always make it better.
Absolutely. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Berserk is a series I've heard nothing but good things about.
Yeah.
Um, I do own the first volume of the library editions. I've not read it yet. It's kind of an impulse buy. Not that I regret it. But I just haven't gotten around to reading it. That's on my list to read very soon. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into that world finally
Yeah.
and experience Berserk.
Yeah, it's the most philosophical story I've ever read, because
Oh
the
wow.
writer Kentaro Miura pulls really deeply from a lot of philosophers. Like Nihei is one that he pulls really, really deeply from and explores the, you know, world building of you know, mind enslavement, being trapped in your own mind and in your own body and stuff like that. So it's really, really good. And he also tells those philosophical elements through his art too. So he has like bunch of panels that look like actual art pieces. Like he was
Oh
very
wow. Okay.
much inspired by uh like kind of, I don't know, don't want to say like Shakespearean era artist, because I don't know what the proper uh art
I think
style that is.
I think I don't know if it's the right era. Actually, I don't think it is. I was going to say realism, but I think that's something completely different. I should know. I took a art history class in college, but
Yeah.
I didn't retain any of that information. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, but it's so good. I mean, it's one of those where it's not for everybody, and I
Sure.
always say that. It does not shy away from the dark details when it goes into what happened to Guts and the
Mhm.
trauma that he experienced. So huge, huge trigger warning when it comes to all of that stuff, because it
Mhm.
shows you everything and it's very gross. But if you get past it, it's about overcoming that. And that's where the message, the powerful message of Berserk really shines through.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
super excited to finally dive into that world for sure. I love that the name Guts. Like that's a perfect name
Yeah.
for our main character in a title called Berserk. So yeah, I'm very excited. And that's the creator passed away, unfortunately, right? Like recently
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think it was 2023, end of 2023, I think.
oh wow, okay. And
Yeah.
it's not finished yet, right? It's still I think somebody's finishing it for him if I'm not mistaken.
So there's 14 Dark Horse Deluxe editions that collect all of Kentaro Miura's work.
Mhm.
But when he passed away, he kind of knew it was coming, and he uh, I guess, passed along his mission of finishing Berserk to his best friend, who's also
Oh,
a
wow.
mangaka.
Okay.
So he knows how it ends. He put out a statement saying, "I'm not going to milk this. This is not to make money. I'm going to tell Kentaro's story. I'm going to end it the way he wanted to end it, and then I'm going to walk away from it." So that's what he's doing.
Wow. Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. All right. Berserk. Awesome. And you read
Yeah.
all 14? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes. See, that's with manga, I feel like I read it a lot quicker than like American comics. You know, usually
Mhm.
more often than not, it tends to be a little more fast paced. And so I'm just worried I'm going to get really into it and I'm just going to like blow all my savings on the rest of the volumes. They're super cool bookends too. Have you seen those with
Yeah, I have them.
you have those, the sword that it looks like it's going through?
They're not the Dark Horse original. I had them custom made, but it's the exact same thing. Yeah.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah.
That's when you do your
I
room
got them
tour.
etched and everything. Yeah.
Whoa, holy smoke. When did you do that?
Probably as soon as I fell in love with Berserk. It was one of those things that I read, and like I said, I mean, I'm really not trying to sound super cheesy here, but it like hit me on an emotional
Yeah.
level. I mean, it's one of the few titles that has like brought a tear to my eye. I don't
Mhm.
cry often. I am not an emotional guy at all. So like even what I'm saying right now is like crazy that I felt that from a book.
Mhm.
But yeah, as soon as I read it, I think by like volume 2, I was like, I want something to turn these books into a shrine, and I bought custom made bookends.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, see, I'm worried I'm gonna fall down that rabbit hole, and which right now financially for me is not an ideal time, let's just say the least. So I've been kind of pushing it off until I know I can, buy the rest of the volumes or, a good chunk of them and read them all at once. Um, but I think I will bite the bullet and start to read that soon, relatively soon.
Yeah.
Probably around the new year, I'd say. Yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, you can take your time because Dark Horse has said those are evergreen. So they will never go out
Oh,
of
cool.
print. There's no rush. There will always be volumes.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. I like when companies come out and say that something's
Yeah.
evergreen. So you don't need to feel the fear of FOMO.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Cool. All right. For my next book, I have two books one from Marvel and one from DC. So I tried to incorporate some superhero stuff in here.
Nice.
And so the first one is not the new Ultimate Spider-Man, but the OG Ultimate Spider-Man. This is
Yes.
my omnibus that I have. Volume 1, I have 1 through 3. So I don't have
Nice.
volume 4 yet. I don't know when I'm gonna get that. I was meaning to put that on my Christmas list actually, and I never did. Anyhow, this book, I love it. It's such a just a fun read, and I
Yep.
really like what they did with the origin story of Peter or Spider-Man, and how they, switched some of the characters around, made them different interpretations of the characters. And I think this is like the perfect spot. And you're much more of a Marvel DC guy than I am. So correct me if you disagree. I think this is like one of the perfect spots to start with Spider-Man if you are interested in reading Spider-Man at all.
Yes.
Even though it's not like in continuity or in canon or whatever, I think this is a great story that understands Spider-Man, what his character is, and it keeps the character the same, really, um, from the original universe. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the actual Marvel universe, but
616.
616, and it does some things different with the characters. It's funny. I think I mentioned this when we were talking about Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man. I feel like that Spider-Man film pulled from the Ultimate Spider-Man, and I think it definitely did because we get MJ in high school in the film, and that's how it is here, and MJ and Peter definitely have a romance right off the bat. Like I don't think Gwen and Peter really have any sort of romance in this for the most. Like they're really, I feel like they're more like brother sister almost.
Yeah. Later on, it gets a little more hairy, but majority of the series, it's more MJ than anything.
Right. Okay. Um, yeah. So I think this is a fun read, and if you're wanting to get into Spider-Man, I think this is like the perfect place to start. Honestly. Um, yeah. What do you think?
I would 100% agree. Yeah, I think it's super palatable for
Yeah.
modern readers, which
Yeah.
is nice because you don't have to go back and read Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's, Spider-Man, which is like a
In the 60s.
complete
Yeah.
slog to read. And I think it's a nice little time capsule. Some people put this in the negative side of it, but I like it, especially being like younger during the 2000s.
Sure.
If it makes you feel like a kid reading it, and it makes you feel like you're back in high school, and like the terminology and the words and the style when it comes to the design of the characters, like
Yeah.
it's such a time capsule, and I kind of love that about it.
I would agree with you there, and well, I didn't grow up with this series reading it.
Mm,
I think it came out in the like 2000, I want to say, like really, or might have been like the 1990s, 1999. I don't know for sure, but so I didn't grow up reading it, but I do have a weird nostalgic feel when I do read this book,
yeah,
and I think it is part of the art, the dialogue, all that contributes to that nostalgic feel when I do read this. And I think it does work for its benefit for sure. I don't think it's a negative at all.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of like that. I mean, so
Yeah.
many people say when you read a comic book and it like ages itself, like, oh, that's such a like I love that. I mean, that's the point of art, you get a little piece of time between
Yeah.
two covers, and it's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think for some titles it works, some titles it doesn't. But I think regardless whether it works from like a story standpoint, where here I do think it works, it like the story does hold up for the most part. There are some things that maybe date it, but I think that's part of the charm.
Yeah.
Whereas other stories, I think it's just dated and it doesn't help the story. It makes it worse. But I think regardless, I don't know. I think this is a fun read for sure.
Yeah. You're gonna like, I think it's I want to say it's volume 2, but I could be wrong and it's in volume 3, but there's like a little story arc that was taking place during the same time that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 was being released.
I know it. Yeah, I know
Yeah,
what you're
so
talking about.
Doc Ock like looks like
Yep.
Doc
Yep.
Ock from the movies and everything, and they're actually filming a movie at the
Yep.
same time. It's so meta and
I
great
I did
dialogue.
read the, volumes 1 through 3 of this, and I think it was in the
What volume
second
was that
volume.
in? Yeah, second
This is
volume. Okay.
just the first one. Yeah, this is number 1. I have the Venom, or the symbiotes variant, I think they call it. And I think that story arc or whatever you wanna call it is in the second volume, and that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
because Tobey Maguire is in there too, and it's just so fun. So yeah, I think this is honestly some of the best Spider-Man I've ever read. Like, if I were to like be like, oh, I want to read Spider-Man today, I would probably just reread this,
yeah,
or maybe like Spider-Man Life Story. But I think I would probably start with Ultimate Spider-Man for sure. I have a lot of fun with it, and funny enough, I didn't grow up with the comic. But I do remember playing the video game, the Ultimate Spider-Man video game on, like, the GameCube or something.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so that's a little nostalgic for me too. Um, so yeah, that's what I have.
Yeah, and that video game follows the Venom storyline of the comic books. Like you pick up during that rainy scene panel with Peter
Okay.
and Venom in the football field. Like that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it's almost a one for one trade-off between the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And this art style of that video game too is very comic booky. You know, it feels like you're
Yeah.
playing a comic book, which I think that's awesome. I should go back and try to like emulate that game or something because that'd be a lot of fun to replay that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, awesome. What do you have for your next book?
Next book is going to be one I've already reviewed on my channel. It's a review that I'm pretty proud of. But nobody watches anything indie on my channel, so I make it for myself essentially.
Hey, it's
Um,
all right.
that being said, it is Monsters
Awesome.
by Barry Windsor Smith. This is, for lack of a better way of describing it in any other form or fashion, it's a masterpiece from the ground up. It is all done by one man, from the writing to the lettering to the art, the paneling, absolutely everything is all from Barry Windsor Smith. It's straight up inks on paper.
Wow.
There's no color. The aspect of the story, or I guess the synopsis of the story, is you follow a young man who gets, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated into a project by the name of the Prometheus Project. And he gets pulled into this project to become the United States' first super soldier. So, of course, that comes with experimenting, borderline torture, a lot of things that are not exactly morally correct or okay to do to a human.
Sure.
Um, but during that, you follow a multitude of characters that have played a role in the Baker family, who the is the family that the book probably focuses on the most. And it follows a character by the name of Sergeant McFarlane, who is a black sergeant in the United States Army. And you get to follow his trials and tribulations dealing with racism, dealing with the government and how they are trying to kind of set him up. You follow um, the main character whose name Bobby Bailey. And I say Baker family, Bailey family, Bailey family, not
Okay.
Baker. Um, but you get to follow Bobby Bailey's mother, who she's a completely super layered woman that has a lot of depth to her character. And the more and more you read, you kind of start to wonder, like, you know, where she's at morality wise and kind of what she could have done to trigger some events that took place. And then you eventually, during the climax, start to find out more about Bobby Bailey's father, who suffers with PTSD, went through a lot of things during World War II because he's a war vet. And it is just like such a super layered story that, I mean, it hits every single genre. You have mystery, you have supernatural elements, you have romance, you have pretty much everything other than comedy, because this is not a funny book. It is a very dark book. It's yet another book that made me get somewhat emotional. I
Oh
didn't
wow.
exactly ugly cry reading it, but there's a scene specifically at the end where Bobby Bailey is reliving his past trauma in his now monstrous form that he takes because of reasons that I won't dive into. Um, and even though he's this monstrous, super powerful man, he is still deathly afraid of his father, like he's a young boy again. And it is just like super, super heartbreaking to see this guy that, you know, everything was stacked up against him, everything was hurting him throughout life, and he's still trying to be positive. He's still scared. So very, very emotional story. It's collected in a beautiful hardcover. I don't think there's any other edition out there.
I want to say there
Um,
might be a paperback, but I
that's what I was
could be
gonna
wrong.
say. There might be a paperback,
Yeah.
but this hardcover is beautiful. It's massive. The art jumps off the paper, super detailed, scratchy, just magnificent. One of the best things I've ever read in my life as well.
Wow. Yeah, that seems like a super heavy book. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
I would have to be like in the right mind space to read
You
that
got
thing.
you got to be in the right mind space, and I said in my video, which I'll say again here to anybody that watches or even to you, like, don't be afraid to take breaks when you read that.
Yeah.
I took so many, I think that book took me like 4 months to read because I just took so many breaks to read something a little bit more lighthearted and
Yeah.
fun. And you have to do that with stories like this where it doesn't shy away from the details. It
Yeah.
it beats you up by the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another book that I've been eyeing forever. And when I watched your video on it, a month or two ago now, I almost pulled the trigger. I almost got it, but I said, I think I'm gonna hold off because I mean, at the time, still now, I just have other stuff to read, and I just don't know when I'll be able to get to it. But I will check that one out for sure eventually.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
I think I have to be in the right headspace.
yeah. The more I get to know you from like doing these shows and stuff, like the more I find myself like when I read like a super cinematic or thought provoking book, I'm like, this is a Labruski read. Like that's what I kind of think to my head is like,
I love that. I
this
love
feels
that.
like a movie. This is thought provoking. This feels like something Labruski would like. That's what I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah, that's a safe bet. If it's cinematic and thought provoking, I might like it. Yeah,
Yep.
that's funny. Um, awesome. Yeah, and the backstory behind that book is too that it was Barry Windsor Smith, right? He's the author, the creator. He was working on a Hulk book, right? Or he was
Um,
supposed to be, and then there was some shady deal, or so I don't know. I don't know the whole story.
so during that time at Marvel, there was a way that they did things where they would tell a storyline and then they would have like creators sub in and kind of tell their own story.
Mhm.
So Barry Windsor Smith created this story as a Hulk story. He wanted this to be a Hulk story that played into the more unhinged nature of the Hulk and why he became that way.
Sure.
And then the creator of Bill Mantlo actually ended up writing that story. There is some controversy behind if he straight up plagiarized it or if Jim Shooter, who was the editor in chief at the time, just handed him the papers and said, "Hey, write this." So it's kind of fuzzy in a weird gray area, but the Bill Mantlo run on Hulk, which is most well known for exploring the abuse and trauma that uh, Bruce Banner went through, is almost a one for one
Oh
story
wow.
when it comes to this story here.
Okay. Interesting. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some shady history when it comes to that, I guess, around the creators.
Yeah, and there's videos that cover it way better than I
Yeah.
ever will, comic tropes and stuff. So, whoever's watching this or even you, just watch that because Chris over there does way better than I ever could.
No, don't sell yourself short now.
He's great, man. He's so good at his job.
Comic tropes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like comic tropes. Yeah. Shout out to comic tropes. I think Taylor Talks Comics. I know he's talked about that book quite a bit. I know
Yeah.
he's a big fan of graphics guy, and I think me and him actually have similar taste in books because I feel like I think he reads a lot of the big two, but I think he reads a lot of indie too, focus books, and
Yeah.
I know he's done a video or two at least on that book. So shout out to Taylor Talks Comics.
Yeah.
Um,
I talked to him a little bit about my review too because I was super
Oh
nervous
yeah,
about it. So yeah, so
were you?
definitely shout out to
Dude,
Taylor
I
for
thought
sure.
your review of that and the endless, really, the overview was great. I remember, I
Oh,
think it was, I think I watched it at my job, which is maybe why I got let go. But no, I remember watching it and really enjoying it. So I think you should keep doing those sort of videos about. I love indie books too, so I don't know.
yeah,
I think that'd be awesome.
yeah. We'll
Um,
we'll see. The behind the scenes is views and how much work I put into them. There's been a lot of discouragement on
yeah,
self-imposed. So we'll see if I continue or not. I don't know.
I think you should. I think you should. Yeah, I think that'd be awesome. But let's see. My next book is a indie title. It's my last indie book on the list. And it is Murder Falcon by Daniel Warren Johnson and Mike Spicer. Have you read this?
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say I absolutely love this book. This book, I am not a crier or a really an emotional guy either, if I'm being honest. Um, and this one, it almost got me to cry. And I think about the ending, and I'm like, damn, that hits hard. Um, but this book is so much fun, and I mean, it's not overly funny or anything like that, but there are humorous elements to it. The artwork is just gorgeous. I mean, so let me take a look here. Look at that. I mean, it's
Oh
Daniel
yeah.
Warren Johnson, so I mean, you know what you're getting with him. It's just absolutely fantastic. And it's such a fun, crazy story about this guy who, and if I'm remembering it correctly, he starts playing a guitar, and the guitar summons the Murder Falcon. And they team up to fight a monster, big monster trying to take over the world. It's super awesome. It's super metal. There's a lot
Yeah.
of you can tell Daniel Warren Johnson is a big metalhead reading this. I'm not, so I'm sure there's some references to bands and whatnot that just completely went over my head. But regardless, it's still super, super awesome. And I think this is a book like almost really anyone that wants to get into comics can read. Um,
Mhm.
and just enjoy and just love. And the ending is so good, and it will get you in the feels for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The character of Jake in that story, and you know, obviously not to go into spoilers, but what's just happening with his character. I mean, it's a story element and a story concept that I think a lot of us can identify with sadly enough
Yep,
because
yep,
it's such a impactful topic and thing.
yep,
And it's very prominent.
yes,
So it's one of those things where I think no matter who reads it, that story element is ingrained in you in some form or fashion, whether it's from, you know, connections you've made or personal or whatever it may be. But
right.
so yeah, very, very, very uh emotional story. So I co-sign everything you said. And the the same thing with me where I kind of got emotional is just that little personal attachment to that thing that we keep referencing to not give up the
And I give it
end.
away,
But
yeah, because I
yeah,
feel
but
like I don't remember. This is actually a book I plan on rereading very soon.
mhm.
Um, maybe like starting like within the week because I want to do a video on it and just talk about it. And yeah, it's just like I said, I'm really not an emotional guy. Um, and there's just this panel on this page and this reveal that's like gets you right here. So I highly recommend this book. Um, it's beautifully illustrated, beautifully written. It's all around a fantastic book. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's all I
great
have to say.
ending too, right?
Great
Like that
ending.
was just
Great ending. Great ending for sure. So yeah, I do want to do a deeper dive into this in on my channel. And I might start working on that soon. We'll see. But I have one more book. Do you have one more too? You do, right?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. What is your last favorite
My last
comic?
one is yet another book that I've talked about on live streams and in videos, which is kind of crazy because my top 10 most anticipated releases, or my top 10 reads of the year, I feel like I've already revealed in all my other videos. If you watch them, you'll probably know everything that's going to show up.
Sure.
But it's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Zoe
Oh my goodness.
Thorogood. This is yet another story that was created from the ground up by Zoe Thorogood. She does everything in this. It is a autobiographical graphic novel that covers 6 months of her life. It was written in 2022, and it was very, very well received in the award market because it won, I think, like 3 or 4 awards. But it was well received in the community as well. Really, really, really impactful and powerful stuff. She dives into self-worth, mental health, depression, anxiety, the relationships that she has in life, whether they are destructive or kind of like transformative or benefit her. She also dives deep into the imposter syndrome, feeling like she's struggling with the footprint that she'll leave on Earth once she's, dead and gone. But the final panels in this, I actually reread 2 days ago now. And it was one of those things where right before reading it, I was kind of thinking about, like, man, I'm just a guy that goes to work, and I make my money, I come home. Like, I have no imprint on this world. And then I flip to the last couple panels, and she just starts talking about the impact that we have on the earth and the people around us, and how that is what's important. That is your impact on earth. And it was like art imitating life, but for me, right
Sure.
there in that moment. And it was so, just another reason I was like, this is such an incredible book. Like, it can just hit you in so many feels, so many relatable topics, things people battle with every single day. But yeah, really, 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 really great book. And it's not super dark or anything. Like, she has a
Yeah.
lot of fun through here. She does mixed medium art, so you have paintings in here,
Love it.
inks, pens, colors, all kinds of stuff. Most of the book isn't in black and white, but yeah, it's so ambitious and so articulately, if that's a word,
It is.
illustrated and depicted and written. And she's a very young girl, which I didn't know.
I think she's
think
like my age, if not like
Yeah,
she's like
yeah,
23, which I'm 24. I think she's like a year or two younger than me. And
yeah. I
she's
was gonna guess 24,
yeah.
but yeah, you'd think she's so much older, just the way she articulates herself. Just beautiful book,
Yep.
such an impactful book. My God.
I totally agree. Last year, I read that last year around this time, and that was one of the books where I was trying to remember when I read it because I wanted to add it to my list because I love that book so much, and it actually
Yeah.
sucks. I let a coworker borrow it, and I'm no longer coworkers, so I haven't. I texted her too about it, and I'm like, "Yo, you have my book," which is fine. Not the end of the world. If I have to buy a new one, I will. But if I
Yeah.
could get my copy back, that'd be great. But anyhow, I just love in that book in particular how open Zoe is. Like she's like, here are all my cards, here are all my skeletons in my closets, everything. Like it's it's and I have to imagine for her, it's a little like freeing almost having, and obviously very scary, putting that all into a graphic novel that is now, I mean, it's super popular. I mean, she's, in my eyes, at least, and in my opinion, you know, one of the most, she's one of the most popular up and coming writer slash artist, you know, and she's definitely, she almost has like a household name within the comics industry, I'd say, for
Yeah.
sure. And yeah, I think it's super brave of her to be so open and put this all into a work of art. And yeah, I absolutely love that book. That's another book where I want to do a deeper dive onto it in it. And I'll just have to get my copy back and reread it first.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, the same. I just to like co-sign what you said, like the
yeah,
same way it's probably freeing, it's
yeah.
probably
Oh,
terrifying
I
because
imagine.
of
Yeah,
just how intimate this book is. Because you're right. I mean, she reveals everything, you know. I mean,
everything.
it's
Yeah,
the nitty-gritty. But one of the parts that I love the most about the book is like even if you're not that much of like a thought-provoking reader or anything, like even just the risks that she was taking during the paneling. Like, there's a point in the book where she ends the book and restarts the book in the middle of the story, which is
yeah,
so crazy. And then she kind of ends the story with a photograph of her writing and drawing the book that you're reading. So it's like you she almost ends it like, hey, you were just in my head, by the way, which is like
yeah.
just so crazy and so many risks being taken. Like, kudos to her. I can't believe how young she is. You'd think she was writing comics for decades,
Forever.
but
Yeah,
she wasn't.
yeah. Have you read any of her other works too? Well,
No, no.
I think didn't you just do a video on Hack and Slash, right?
I picked up Hack and
Oh,
Slash.
you picked it
Yeah,
up. Okay, yes, that's right, in the hall.
it was in
That's
my
one
hall. Yep.
where I haven't read it. I really want to. Even though I've read some of the like other hack and slash books and haven't been crazy about it, but I mean Zoe Thorogood, she's one of those writers slash artists that if her name's on it, I'm buying it
Yep.
regardless. So I need to pick that up. That's another book of many that I have just not bought yet. And then she also has one that's really good, The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott.
Yep.
And that came out, I believe that was really her first work. That came out because I think she talks about it in It's Lonely. I would say It's Lonely as of today is kind of her biggest work, her most
Yeah.
popular. But before that, you know, The Impending Blindness of Billy Scott was really what kind of got her name on the map, if you will. And that's super good too. It's super good. If you go in after you read It's Lonely, you definitely can see the influences of her real life uh, reflected in that book. Um, yeah, that's another book. I think that's great. I think it's a great book for sure.
Yeah, the two creators that I'm trying to follow the most intimately is Daniel Warren Johnson, which is the
Yeah.
creator you just talked about. I have everything that he's written in my library right
Oh
now,
wow.
so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Which it's not a super long catalog. He's very new to the world of comics, so it wasn't hard. Like, it's not that big of an
it's super
achievement,
expanded. Yeah.
but also Zoe Thorogood. I want to pick up. I think all I'm missing is the impending blindness. That's the last work that I need to get of hers that is 100% creator owned. I mean,
Right. Yeah, because she's done hack and slash, which I think is I don't know how it works, but Tim Seeley, I believe he was the creator of hack and slash in that
mhm.
universe, and she's just worked with him, collaborated with him. And then she also did a comic, Life is Strange, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not sure if she wrote that. I don't know. I don't even know if she did the interior art of that. She might have just done the covers. So
That's
don't quote
based
me.
off a video game, I believe.
It is. It
It's
is. Yep.
either a video game adaptation or like an edition or something like that.
Yeah. I think it might be like it might be like a spinoff. And then she also did Rain
Rain, yeah.
by Joe Hill, I want to
Yep.
say.
Yep.
I think it's in his imprint, the Hill House Comics or
Yep.
whatever. And she just did the interior. She didn't, I don't think she wrote it. Still a pretty good book. So I think for all of you, those who are watching, I would definitely check that one, check all those out. Really, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the two creators that I am head over heels for. I mean, they are just not only awesome people and superhuman, but just incredibly talented.
Yeah, I've watched some of Zoe Thorogood's because she has a YouTube channel. She doesn't really post on it, but she has some like Q&As and she dives into some of the backstory of It's Lonely and Impending Blindness.
Mhm.
And she's just a super interesting person to listen to.
Yeah.
I find her fascinating to listen to. Because I think, partially because she is so open and she's just she comes off very almost carefree. Obviously, when you read It's Lonely, it doesn't seem that she is very carefree.
Yeah.
But she's just so open. Yeah, I love that book. Love that
Yeah.
book. All right. I have only one book left, and this is another DC omnibus, and it is Gotham Central.
Ooh.
Yeah, by Ed Brubaker, Greg Rucka, Michael Lark. I absolutely love this book. If Have you watched The Wire ever?
Yeah. Yep.
I read this book and I watched The Wire recently, and I read this book I think beginning of last year or this year. And I just watched The Wire, the first season at least. And this book, I think it pulls so much from that show, and just it has a very similar feel to it, and which is not a bad thing at all. It's
Yeah.
um, I think it pulls some inspiration from The Wire for sure. So, what my point is, for those of you who are listening, if you are a fan of this show, The Wire, and also a DC fan, definitely read this one. It's incredible. I believe Ed Brubaker and then Greg Rucka would switch off each issue. One would follow the night crew, one would follow the day crew,
Yep.
and they would write in the same universe. Well, obviously the same universe, but write kind of this similar storyline. I don't know how you not similar storyline. I don't know how you would describe it, where they would play of each other each issue.
Like
And
piggyback.
what's that?
Like almost piggyback off each other story wise.
Yes.
Yeah.
The artwork is beautiful. I mean, if you like Ed Brubaker stuff, Greg Rucka, I don't know what else has he done? I'm drawing a blank on.
Lazarus, he did Wonder Woman.
Okay,
He helped out with 52. Um, a lot of work over at DC.
cool. So yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about this book. I imagine I will reread this at some point. I mean, it's not super dense or anything. You definitely, I think with this omnibus, I think it's a perfect omnibus because it's a full
Yeah.
story. Um, and if I remember correctly, there are a couple, or maybe like one event that happens that, it's not in this book. So if you don't know anything about the event, the DC event, it may kind of throw you off for a second. Um, but it's really just a great story. So yeah.
Yeah. And the golden aspect about that book too is it stands on its own 2 feet, like
Yeah. Yep.
you can jump into that, and like you said, other than the event that's kind of referenced during that title or during DC at that time,
Yep.
I mean, you don't really see like, Batman
No.
and like, I mean, you see some of his rogues gallery, I guess, but it really is its own thing, and it has its own cast, its own main characters. So you can jump into it completely blind as long as you kind of know who Batman is and what Gotham City is. But other
Yep.
than that, I mean, you can just start reading.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very mature book too.
Yeah.
Compared to other DC books, or I mean, I feel like nowadays a lot of comic books in general tend to be a little bit more mature.
Mhm.
But I feel like this one in particular, it almost reads like an indie book at times, which I love.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's a great book. Like I said, I mean, I imagine I will reread this. I might want to do a deep dive on my channel of this book, just because I love it so much. And like you said, kind of piggybacking off of what you said, you really don't seem like Batman. He's rarely in the story, so it doesn't lean on Batman or use Batman as a crutch to try to tell a compelling story. Um, it has its own cast of characters, which you really fall in love with too, and you really get to know them and relate to them. I mean, I think in this universe, the DC universe, it's can be refreshing to read a story about everyday people, and
Yep.
this is very much that in a lot of sense. They're just dealing with Batman's Rogues Gallery. The first issue, or I guess the first arc, deals with Mister Freeze,
Mhm.
um,
Yep.
and it deals with other villains and whatnot. So, as somebody who is a Batman fan like myself, I really enjoyed this book. But also, like I said, more of a indie comics reader. I think this is like the perfect blend for me. So I really enjoy it. I have nothing but good things to say. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, one of DC's very, very good omnibuses, and new reader friendly, veteran reader friendly. Whoever you are, you can read that.
for sure, for sure. And I feel like I feel like this omnibus was out of print for a little while, and
Yeah.
it was going for like $300 or something crazy like that, and maybe even more. So now it's in print, and from what I understand, I don't know if it's evergreen, but I imagine it will be in print for hopefully a long time because that story's just that good. Um, so yeah, those are my top reads of the year.
Yep. And mine now to the hard part.
Um, all right, let's see. Let me see how many. All right, favorite movies and TV shows. Let's see. So I have 3 movies and then 2 TV shows. So if you want, I can just quickly list my 3 movies. We can talk about them for a second, then we can talk about your movies, and then we'll dive into the TV shows where I imagine, the most of the conversation we'll be having. And I actually, as I'm talking, I just thought of another movie.
Yeah, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So my first movie, and mind you, this is kind of the same thing with the comics. These movies didn't necessarily come out this year, but they're movies I watched for the first time and really enjoyed. The first one I have is First Man, starring Ryan Gosling. It's a historical nonfiction about the Apollo 13 mission, I want to say, or Apollo 11. I think it's 13, the one that actually went to the moon, and about Neil Armstrong. Super, super interesting movie. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I can't remember the director's names, but he did La La Land, I want to say, and then Whiplash, I believe. So I mean, the cinematography is really good. Ryan Gosling, I love Ryan Gosling. Um, so this movie was a lot of fun and interesting to learn about that story.
Cool. Yeah.
Have you seen that or no?
I haven't seen that. I haven't even heard of it, but I've been really out of the movie market this year because nothing really looked great. But
Yeah, this one it didn't come out this year. It came out like before COVID at least, and
oh, well, that's
even
why I didn't.
yeah, even when it came out, I think it flew under the rug. Like it did not do well at the box office. It was critically acclaimed though, and it definitely should have done better at the box office because it was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. Okay, next movie I have is Swingers by John Favreau, starring him and then Vince Vaughn. Have you ever seen this movie?
No.
Yeah, so I think it's John Favreau. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it's really his first movie, or I think it's his first popular, mainstream type of movie. I mean, it came out in like the 90s. Um, and I think it's what started his career, and then also Vince Vaughn. And it is a very down to earth story just about a guy who I think he wants to be a screenwriter, moving from New York City to LA, and he just got out of a breakup, and he's just trying to navigate, his life in his probably his late 20s, early 30s. So, I mean, that's something I can definitely relate to as someone who's kind of trying to figure it out. And it's a kind of I don't know if it's a slow burn, but it's not super action filled. It's yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it a slow burn though. I think it's pretty well paced, but don't go into it thinking it's going to be an action movie or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
definitely a very human story. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd recommend it for sure. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun story, and it's heartfelt too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a disclaimer, if you ever see me, same with anybody watching this, looking over it, I'm adding them to my list so I can watch
Oh,
them.
is that
So,
right?
yeah,
Oh,
that's why I
I
keep
didn't
looking
know
over
that.
here.
That's funny. I used to when we first started the shows, I had my iPad and I would write and create a list or whatever, and then I stopped because I started to write too much. So I should try to work something out where I can still create a list during the show. But anyhow, yeah, so Swingers, I would highly recommend it. I think it's on Amazon Prime. I want to
Okay.
say I watched it not too long ago, like 3 months ago, maybe. And I think it was on Amazon Prime. Um, and then the third movie I have is Cocaine Bear, which came out last year, maybe. I think last year or 2022. I can't remember. Have you seen this one?
Yeah.
Dude, so much fun. It was so much fun. Like, it does not take itself too seriously. It knows what it is, but it works. It works really well. The comedy, for the most part, from what I remember, usually always hits. And the CGI is decent. I mean, it's nothing amazing, but I don't think it's anything jarring where it took me out of the film or anything like that. And just a fun story overall with a pretty good villain played by the guy from Goodfellas, Ray something. I can't remember his name now.
Leota.
Yes. He did a pretty good job as kind of the villain, besides the Cocaine Bear, who's also kind of the other villain. Just a fun movie, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was a movie that I think I went into and was expecting like Sharknado,
Sure.
like literally just comically bad,
Yep.
and it kind of had some substance. And
It did.
I was very impressed with such a comical concept actually being watchable. So I don't think I would put it on my top movies, but it was better, way better than I thought it was going to be.
For sure. I think it was just a fun surprise when I watched it. I remember I was building like a Lego set or something. I just wanted something to turn on in the background, and I'm like, you know what, I'll give this a shot. And I had a lot of fun with it. And actually, I just thought of another movie that I'll quickly talk about. So I
Go
have
for it.
5 in total. I'll talk about this one first. Fall Guy, starring Ryan Gosling, which I don't know. I feel like it did come out this year.
I think it did too. Yeah.
That was another just a fun blockbuster flick. It worked for what it is. It's not that one. I would say it's. I mean, it's not very thought provoking or dense, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a fun action rom-com type movie, and Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt are great in it, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. So have you seen that one or no?
I have seen Fall Guy, but I fell asleep during it. So I count it as I watched it, but How
You
much of
should
it? I don't know.
you should rewatch it. I enjoyed it. Okay, my last movie I wanted to talk about, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah,
And
I
I
knew
don't
you were
know.
gonna say that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to save that one. Um, honestly, I enjoyed it. I, I think if I saw more movies this year, I don't know if it would have made the list, to be honest with you. But I had fun with it. I had fun with it. I think it works for a Deadpool movie. I would say honestly, it's probably my favorite out of the three, which I feel
yeah,
like most people would disagree with that from what I've seen online and whatnot. People think it's the weakest, but if I were to rewatch a Deadpool movie anytime soon, I would probably rewatch this one. And I think the jokes, for the most part, work. The action is awesome. I love the final s- scene, kind of with the like the end of the third act. Um, I thought that was great with the Madonna song. I really enjoyed that.
yeah.
And yeah, there's just a lot of cool, fun action sequences in that film that I think works. Yeah.
Okay,
So
solid.
those are my movies.
Okay. So we'll go into mine. You did name one of mine, but while you're talking, I replaced it. So I still
Okay.
have three.
Okay.
But first, the one that you shared with me, which is Deadpool Wolverine. I thought it was perfect
Yep.
for a Deadpool Wolverine movie. It was great seeing Hugh Jackman out. Um,
Yep.
I would give it very, very high ratings, but I'm like a superhero movie snob. Like I will literally absorb everything that comes out and probably like it typically.
Sure. No, that's
Um,
fair.
so I won't say too much more about that because you hit the nail on the head there. But great blockbuster movie, just a lot of fun. Um, Another movie that I really liked is We Live in Time. I don't know if you saw
Hmm.
that. I talked to you about it before.
We Live in Time.
Yeah, it has Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh in it. It's a rom-com drama is probably the
Okay.
genre I would tag it with.
Yep. Yep. Haven't seen it. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've heard about it though.
Yeah, really, really good. I wasn't too fond of the ending. I felt the ending was a little cliche, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Very expected. I would have liked them go another direction, but everything else building up to it was fantastic. It was almost like the movie you talked about, Swingers, where it was just unapologetically human.
Yep.
It showed the good, the bad. It showed the positive and negative aspects of the characters that are there. But it follows a husband and wife when they first meet and then eventually get together, the trials and tribulations they run into while dating, and then they eventually get engaged. They have a child together, but all kinds of actual super relatable drama kind of takes place. And along with like zombie movies being my guilty pleasure, rom-coms is probably my other guilty pleasure. Like Crazy
Interesting.
Stupid Love is one of my favorite movies ever.
Crazy
I
Stupid
just
Love.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling's in that too.
Steve Carell. Yep. That's a good
Yep,
movie. I
that
enjoy
is
that
a good
movie
movie.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a fun
probably in
one.
my top 5 favorite movies I've ever seen. So,
Really? Wow. Okay.
um, I just find them really watchable, and that's
Sure.
what this was. This was super watchable, super relatable, absolutely great. Um, the other movie was Dune Part 2.
Okay.
Um, I admittedly did not like Part 1. I thought it was a very, very slow burn. Um, I found myself kind of bored of it before we reached the end.
Hmm.
But with part two, I think it hits the ground running right away. We know who the characters are, we know how the world works. Now we are ushered and forced into this war that is taking place, and how they fight the war is like super creative and different because it's
Hmm.
not like guns or swords or whatever. Like there's a
Right.
certain level of that, obviously, because they use daggers and stuff, but there's shielding, there's specific weaponry you see, there's giant desert worms, there's all kinds of stuff, and the acting in that is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I think that has a Timothy Chalamet, is that how you say his name?
I think it's
um,
Timothy Chalamet.
there you go, yeah, and then Zendaya
Yep.
and the guy that played Elvis, what was his name?
Austin Butler.
Austin Butler, who's super hot right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, the cast is stacked. I mean, you
Yeah.
have Josh Brolin in there too, Florence Pugh, did you mention Florence Pugh?
is she? Oh yeah, she is in
Yeah,
it. She plays
she's in
the
there.
the daughter. Yeah. Yep.
Yep. The guy who plays the Duke, I'm trying to blank on his name. I know his last name's Skarsgård.
Yeah,
Um,
he's the dad, isn't he?
he's the dad. I can't remember his name now. And I don't
Batista.
know. What's that?
Dave Batista's in it too.
Dave Batista. I thought he died in the first one.
No, he's in it, and then so is
Is he?
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin, yep. And I'm thinking of a different character now that I remember. Yeah, so I mean the cast is stacked. That's a
Yeah.
film. I saw the first one in theaters, and I remember being surprised by it. Like I didn't love it. I didn't dislike it at all. Like I would say I enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it in the movie theater. But I did not have much of a desire to see the second one. And so I still haven't. And it's funny, I was meaning to go watch it with a college buddy of mine who's huge into movies. And that we planned on it like a couple times and it fell through. So it just wasn't meant to be. And I don't know. I think it's streaming on Max now. So maybe if I'm super bored, I'll watch it. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a long watch, and it's also one of those movies where I know it's not for everybody,
Yeah.
but
Well,
at the same time,
I tried to rewatch the first one and I didn't even finish it. I was like, yeah, whatever. So
the
I don't
first one's rough though. This one, the acting is really kicked up a
know.
notch.
Okay.
I mean, it's really, really good acting caliber wise.
Got
So
it.
if anything, you can take that out of it and at least be like, wow, I watched
At
some
least enjoy,
actors
yeah.
really perform.
Cool. Cool.
And then the third one that I added last minute, once you said Deadpool Wolverine, is I did a Mission Impossible watch through with my wife. So
Oh,
I'm
you
gonna say
mentioned this, yeah.
all of the Mission Impossibles is up to Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I think Part 2 is gonna be coming out here shortly or
I
something.
believe. I don't know. I've never seen a Mission Impossible movie, to be honest.
Oh, they're so awesome.
Yeah.
They're so
So,
good. Yeah,
so
I
that's
mean,
yeah.
you can watch Tom Cruise run from stuff for I think it's like 8 movies or something. He's just running and kicking butt and just oh my gosh, it's so good. I mean, the second one is kind of hit or miss. It's very,
Okay.
very of its time. The first one really, really impressed me because it still holds up even in 2024.
Oh,
The CG and stuff, like you can tell people are on like wires and stuff, and so it's a little dated in that regard. But the story and the acting and stuff, it holds up. It's pretty good. But number 3 is my favorite, which is just so good from beginning to end. Such a great kind of change up at the end where you're
mhm.
not expecting Ethan Hunt, the main character, who's played by Tom Cruise, gets put into a situation that is like when you put yourself in that situation, you're like, oh, well, I'll just probably die because I won't know what to do. But I mean, he just is such a awesome character. So I do recommend at least watching up to number 3. And then
Up to
if you
number
want
3.
to stop there, that's fine. But number 3 is like the peak of Mission Impossible. But at the same
Okay.
time, they are really episodic. So maybe you can just watch whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But they're all good.
Yeah, I mean that's a series that's it's like Fast and Furious. I think I've seen like the first Fast and Furious, but that's another
Yeah.
big action series that has been going on forever, and I've just never, I just never really watched. So I will maybe check that one out eventually. I'm not a huge action movie guy though, that's the thing. So yeah, no, I'm willing to give it a shot though, absolutely. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, maybe just start with 3 then. Just try 3. If you don't like
Okay,
it, shut it down, but at least give it a go.
give it a shot. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to add that to my list. Real quick before we dive into the TV shows, I just thought of another movie I watched that I wanted to quickly talk about. It didn't come out this year, it came out last year, and that is Oppenheimer. I finally watched
Mm,
Oppenheimer, and I have to say, I think it's my favorite Christopher Nolan film ever. I love it. I love it.
wow.
Me being a history buff, even though I don't necessarily like learning about the World War One and World War Two, like that time period. Like I don't know. But I found it so fascinating. The actors, the direction, the score, everything about it just was like a 10 out of 10 for me. I love that movie. Like I said, I think it's my favorite Nolan film ever. I have a hot take, and I don't, and which is we can talk about this at another time. Um, I do not love the Dark Knight trilogy really whatsoever. I'm just throwing that
Mm,
out there, but we can maybe dive into that.
oof.
Yeah, we can maybe dive into that another time. Um, yes, Oppenheimer. Have you seen it?
Yeah. Yep.
So good. Love I really
Yeah.
wish I saw that in the theaters. I really do.
Did you see Barbie in the theaters though?
I did not. I did not.
Yeah.
I did watch Barbie before I watched Oppenheimer. Really not out of choice. It was last year around Thanksgiving. Usually me and my family watch a movie or whatever. And that year we decided to rent Barbie, and that was like our family movie. And honestly, it was pretty good. I enjoyed.
Yeah.
I had fun with that. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to watch it again, but if someone had it on or wanted to watch it really bad, I'm not going to protest it. I'll watch it. But
Yeah.
um,
That's where I'm
I,
at.
yeah, I like Ryan Gosling in it. I think for me, he's the best part of the film for sure. Um, but anyhow, Oppenheimer. I love that movie so much.
Okay.
Yes,
That's a solid list we put out there.
I know for sure. So why don't we talk about some TV shows? I only have two. I want to say that I wanted to touch upon, and one we already talked about at length, which is the Penguin. I don't know if I have really anything else to add about my thoughts to that show, other than what we've talked about before. Yeah, I just really love that show so much. I think that's a
Yeah.
show that in 20 years time I will want to rewatch. It's a show I definitely will revisit in the future, not only as a big Batman fan, but also just as a TV enjoyer. I like to rewatch shows that I already watch, um, and that is the show that has definitely made that list of rewatching every few years or so. So that is one of my shows. So what do you, I think you have more shows than what I wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, I figured you're going to have Penguin, so I left that off
Yep.
my list. Um so my 3, I'll start from least best to best.
Okay.
That's how I'm going to go through them. So first show is going to be, where'd my list go? My list just disappeared. Okay. Well, I guess I can't. I'm just gonna have to raffle it off my head. Um,
I can talk about my other show if you want while you try to get your notes back up.
oh no, here I got it. I got
Okay,
it.
perfect.
It was only really for my number 2 because I wanted to make sure I said the right title.
Okay.
So the first show was, which we talked about in our last show, Tales of the Jedi.
Okay.
It is an animated show. It gives so much context and world building to the Star Wars world, specifically Count Dooku. Such a intricate, layered, and in-depth character, especially after watching that. You get
Okay.
so much respect for Count Dooku, not as an individual, but as a character and what he's been through. And it is just so cool. You get to see Mace Windu. You get to see Yaddle, who is essentially a female version of Yoda, who's also a Jedi Master. A young Qui-Gon Jinn, who was Count Dooku's Padawan. So great for world building and adds so much context to the relationship that Count Dooku had with the Jedi Council, that he eventually gets with Darth Sidious. Really, really great stuff. Super thought provoking. Makes you kind of think, like, was Count Dooku kind of right in some of the stuff he was doing before becoming a full Sith? But
Sure.
I digress. That's a whole nother topic. But number 2 is Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action show.
Okay.
I thought this was everything that the movie should have been.
Okay.
It was actually a breath of fresh air to see book 1, the water book, shown some justice and actually depicted in a respectful manner, unlike what M. Night Shyamalan did. I think the casting was great. I think the acting was good enough. I don't think
Okay.
anybody's winning awards for it. But the
It's
set
passable, though.
pieces, yeah, it was passable.
Okay.
But the set pieces and the CGI and everything, outstanding. Like, I absolutely love how they depicted the nations, airbending, waterbending, firebending. And I also think they take the lighthearted nature of Avatar: The Last Airbender and they inject it with some darkness, because there's some scenes in there where people are dying, people are getting set on fire by the Fire Nation. Like, it has some darkness to it, and it goes in some routes that the cartoon obviously couldn't, because it was more geared towards kids. So
Sure.
really, really liked that. And then my show of the year, which I'd probably say is my watch of the year, because it absolutely blew me away. And I was sitting and waiting to watch it. I don't know why, because I knew I was going to like it. And that is Shogun, which was on FX.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I mean, such an incredible show. It's a history piece that depicts I don't know what era of Japan it is, but you're going to have governmental espionage elements. You're going to have backstabbing. You're going to, of course, have like samurai warfare and the in-depth exploration of how samurais worked and how that culture worked, that part of the world during that time period. And you also have like almost a self-insert character where you have I think he's English. He's English. He's like a sailor, just a random white dude that winds up in Japan and is like part of this new culture that he has to understand and learn Japanese and learn how they do their rituals and how they eat and talk to each other and respect each other, how they kind of take part in combat and war. But it is so good. Acting is like 10 out of 10. Every single character in that show is like the best acting I've seen in a TV show since like Game of Thrones. And
Wow.
that's
Okay.
why it's so high, because this is the show that it slips my mind when I talk about shows sometimes, but I was as hooked to this as Game of Thrones. Like, this
Wow. Okay.
to me is what people should be watching instead of House of Dragons. This is 100 times better. It is so good. And the characters and the backstabbing and the just the way they go about everything is so out of the box and so interesting. You don't see a lot of things coming. things that are predictable are like kind of predictable for a reason because it's going to take a left turn at some point. So just absolutely incredible show. I could talk about that for hours, how good that show is.
I've heard so much about that show. So much good. Like I don't think I've heard a bad thing about that show. So that's a show I absolutely want to watch. And you
Yeah.
talking about that, I might start that soon for sure. Maybe we can do an episode about it, maybe in the new year. Because yeah, that sounds like an awesome show. I imagine I'll like it. So I will. You sold me on it. I'm gonna try to check that out. Make sure I add that to the
Good.
list. That's awesome. The other show you mentioned, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I remember when that came out. I tried to watch it, but I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. I mean, I've seen the animated show. I love the animated show. And no, I mean, I don't really have anything against like live action adaptations of shows or anime. Like I'm open to it.
Mm.
And actually, when you were talking about Avatar, it reminded me of another show I wanted to talk about quickly, which is One Piece, the live action one. I think they did a really good job adapting that to live action. Now, knowing not the rest of the story, but I would say half of the story and where the story is going, I have no idea how they're going to do that in live action or how they're going to make that look good.
Yeah.
I know. I think there's definitely a second season coming out, and I feel like they got greenlit for a third. I could be wrong on that, but I know for sure a second season is happening. And I just don't know how they're going to do some of that stuff in live action and make that work.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm worried about it, I guess. And there was another show, The Boys, season 4. Did you watch that?
I did. Yeah.
I think it was probably the weakest of the 4 seasons so far.
Yeah.
Personally, I still enjoyed it. To me, it's still kind of more the same of The Boys, and I love The Boys. I like the show. I don't like the comic. I have my issues with the comic. Yeah,
Oof.
I do not like the comic, and I see your hardcovers back there now. Actually, yeah, I don't think the comic works at all. I think this is a conversation for another time. But and anyhow, I think the show is a rare example of the adaptation outshining and being better than the source material.
Oof.
And I will stand my ground on that for sure.
You might want to bury that part of this.
No, I will die on that hill if I have to.
Oh man.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it's a rare thing when that happens. Honestly, I'm trying to think of another example, and I really can't. I think The Boys outdoes the comic in so many regards. Not to say the comic doesn't have anything to offer. Personally, it wasn't for me. Maybe it just comes down to just personal taste.
Yeah.
I just think the show's a lot better. We could talk about that another time, though. And there was another show that I watched too this year called Baby Reindeer. It's on Netflix. It's a thriller.
I've heard about this.
Yeah,
Nicolas
and
Cage, right?
no. No, it's about a woman who. It's based on a true story too. It's about a woman who starts stalking just a guy, and the story is super crazy. It goes a lot of different places. I will say there's some essay in it, so trigger warning about that if you don't do well with that type of stuff. Even I was like, oh my God, this is kind of very intense at times, but I do think the show's overall very good. I think it's relatively short. Like I want to say there's like 3 or 4 episodes or something, each an hour long though, but I think it's well paced, and I really enjoyed that show. And I don't know if it came out this year. I feel like it did.
I think it did. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember hearing
Let's
about
see.
it.
2024. Yeah, so it came out this year. And like I said, it's based on a true story, and I highly recommend those of you watch it. If you have not seen it already and you think you may like it, but be warned, it can be intense and a tough watch at times, especially like in the third and fourth episode. I'd say can be very difficult to handle. So yeah, but it's a good show for sure. I enjoyed it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you have any other shows, or was that it?
No, that was it. Yeah.
That was it. Wow. So we talked about a lot. We can't speak now. We've been talking for 2 hours, so that's why I can't speak. But I think yeah. Why don't we wrap it up? I think this is going to be the last episode of the year officially,
Yep.
and I think it's going to be the 6th episode, if I'm not mistaken, 6th or 7th.
Yeah. So we technically can't call this season 1 of All in One because we didn't make it a full season. But
Now maybe I still will. Maybe I'll call it season 1. We'll see. So yeah, that it's been a fun ride so far. I've been enjoying it. I'm looking forward to the shows in the new year. I think we're going to be aiming to do a show on the 4th, but I think it's going to be tentative. Just going to see closer to the date. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. So
yeah.
for those of you watching, thank you for watching till the end. I hope you've enjoyed. And yeah, we will be back live hopefully on the 4th. If not, I'll let I'll make a post or whatever and keep you guys updated on when we'll be live next. But Illuminerdi, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you? I'm sure they know by now, but why not?
Illuminerdi _ on Instagram, TikTok. I'm primarily on YouTube where I do mainly comic book content. So I talk about comic books. I do overviews, reviews, and top 5s, top 10s, all the good comic booky content that we love on YouTube.
Awesome. And I was just thinking I should try to get a banner of like the link to your YouTube channel. I'm not that quick at the computer though, so we'll have to add that in post or something. But all right, I think that's going to do it. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm looking forward to hearing some of your guys' thoughts on our top reads and our top watches of this year. And then also to know what you guys enjoyed this year overall. So, yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the new year.